So I begin now with med architects. I admire them for their courage, for their level of experimentation, although lately I think they are a little bit carried away by their success, and I think they are less convincing in their very latest works. But they still accomplished a lot, and they are still young. So they are remarkable. I call this presentation Mad, Mad, Happy, Mad, because I played with the name of their firm, because I think any kind of intense creativity approaches some kind of madness, and but also some kind of happiness. So when you are very, very creative, you have a chance to be very, very happy, even in a so-called mad way. So mad, mad, happy, mad. The Chinese, first I will show you a few things from traditional art in China, because although Ma Yansong, the founder of this firm, is considered a futurist, not in the sense of Marinetti's futurist, but in the sense of doing futuristic architecture, he actually claims he's a traditionalist. We'll see. But the Chinese word for landscape is shanshui, from the combination of shan and shui, respectively mountains and water. And here the overall natural result is expressed through the combination of the solidity of matter with the fluidity of liquid, reflecting, as in all Chinese culture, the dichotomy of yin and yang. Shanshui is also a style of traditional painting that depicts picturesque landscapes with granite peaks that emerge from the clouds and blend into a changing landscape of pine trees and streams. China has a great chance and privilege that it has a very old culture, and in this respect, you know, is very, very rich. And if it knows how to connect with its very rich cultural past and even spiritual past, China would be unstoppable. It's already kind of unstoppable. How do you explain that this country stopped the coronavirus? No other country was able to, and they did it. And I think they did it, although, you know, there are suspicions that, you know, some of the, you know, statistics coming from there are not correct. But I know they already have sports events where people are allowed to attend, you know, large crowds. So I think something works. And anyway, I don't want to exalt. I'm sure they had problems and they still have problems. But their old culture and their old spirituality is, you know, more than convincing. So you see in these old you know, paintings, the mountain, the granite, and the water, or the fog, or the sky. So you see nature in its dualities. You have stability, meaning the mountain, the granite, and you have the water, which means fluidity. And med architects are able to explore this theme in some of their works quite brilliantly. But in many of the traditional landscape paintings of old China, you see this duality, this dichotomy between the solid and the fluid, between the mountain and the river, or the lake, or the sea. And the mountains are really mountains, and the sea is really sea, and the sky is so. And the house of man is as it is, you know. When I see this little hut here, I remember that I wanted to do once a competition for Paris, for the Palace of Justice, which actually was owned by Renzo Piano, and he built a horrible building in Paris. Anyway, and I wanted to propose not the Palace of Justice, but the Hut of Justice. And I wanted a building just like this one, the most modest little hut on top of a mountain, because I wanted to build a hill, actually, not a mountain, with excavated earth from adjacent building sites. And on top of it, to have such a little hut like this one, with an old man there distributing justice to whoever wanted to go there, as opposed to 11,000 lawyers which inhabit the huge machinery called the Palace of Justice. So again, against the Palace of Justice, the Hut of Justice. And I actually learned that this was the myth of Saint Louis in Paris, because Saint Louis was also distributing justice. And that's why the effigy of Saint Louis is in any courtroom or Palace of Justice in France. Anyway, sorry for this side dish. Again, a few more paintings of traditional Chinese old painting showing, mountains representing stability and water representing instability. This is Ma Yansong. Ma Yansong, this still young architect who studied in the United States at Yale. Then he went to Zaha Hadid, worked there a little bit, and then he went back to China and started this firm that is immensely successful now, one of the best known architecture firms in the world. He doesn't look very happy, but this is his persona, I guess. But I like him. He's obviously a little bit mad. It's okay, it's fine. We need creative people. Doesn't matter how bad. And I love this picture. I have to tell you, I would look at this picture non-stop, 24 hours a day. Here are three young architects. The two on the right are his partners now, because the firm grew so much that he couldn't handle it any longer alone. But I think they are beautiful. The one on the right is beautiful. The one in the middle is beautiful. The one on the left is beautiful in a different way. These three young people should be an encouragement to anyone who has any ambition in architecture to create, that it is possible. They tell us that it is possible, but, and this is a big but, not B-U-T-T, but B-U-T. The man on the left and also his partners understood that without digital technology at the highest level, they cannot achieve what they achieved. So they are extremely knowledgeable, and they are in the front line of architecture in this field. So maybe this is what Ma Yansong understood in the office of Zaha Hadid. Yale University is a little bit, I mean, they cultivate the new too, but there is also a conservative side to Yale. Whatever, Ma Yansong created a firm that is making big waves. And now almost every day you see on Arch Daily or Design or whatever, Design Boom and Bustler.net, news about what these young people do and did. First, the Absolute Towers in Canada, where they were inspired by Marilyn Monroe. At least this is what Ma Yansong claimed and said. Look at the plans, each floor is different because you have this movement, Again, you cannot do this manually, and you cannot do something like this with a T-square and rectangle. It is impossible. So my advice to students in architecture, learn digital techniques, because we have them, and without them, you cripple yourself. Look what they did, and very young. I think at that time, I don't know, he must have been less than 35. At that time, he was without the other two partners, but they were built and in Canada, and compare them with the other towers. To my taste, I mean, I don't want to be totally uncritical, but I also don't want to spoil the joy of the creativity. They are, for my taste, they are a little bit mundane, a little bit commercial, but still, I salute them. And there are views of these two towers that are very moving and inspiring. It's amazing. They did it. We can't even draw this. We cannot draw them because we don't have the tools to draw them. Forget about building them. In order to build them, you need to do very rigorous drawings, and we cannot do them with a primitive technique. It's impossible. And this was just the beginning. They have buildings now that are much more adventurous than this, as if these were not already adventurous. Here, I don't know, maybe he's praying there, or I don't know what he's doing, and I don't even know if it's him, whatever. This is the model of the towers. This is the man, Ma Yansong. He lectures in the world, and it's beautiful. When you practice architecture at the highest level, at the most adventurous and creative, it's very rewarding, you know, and doors open, we need that kind of emancipation. We cannot be content with being timid architecture is beautiful when it is an adventure. And this man understood this. And he came with a handicap, or probably he was from a well-to-do family. I mean, how many Chinese study at Yale? It doesn't matter. He did something, he earned his life. And he's earning his life with his two other beautiful partners and with his whole office, actually. And by the way, they hire. So, but if you get a job, they expect to work very, very hard because they work very, very hard. In general, the Chinese are very, very hardworking. Otherwise, they would not have achieved what they achieved. But look at these curves, you know, they are magical, you know, they are done with geometry, but a betrayed geometry in a certain way, in the name of life. I like particularly this picture. So as I said, he claimed that he was inspired by Marilyn Monroe. He probably fell in love with Marilyn Monroe and you know, the movement of her body, and he abstracted that beauty into these towers. Now the Ordos Museum in China, another architectural adventure. Of course, other people work in this way these days, but they were some of the, you know, the earliest who did that, some of the first ones. And again, without a certain technology and the capacity to draw and to conceive such a project, you wouldn't be able to build it. It's impossible. So we have here again, you know, that liquid, you know, liquidity that Goethe talked about, to an extent, at least to an extent. I like this picture where you have, you know, traditionally dressed people, even with an animal, entering and being inside of a building that, you know, would have made probably even Zaha Hadid smile. You know, it's, again, how come that this former communist country, and it had the most stringent and the most rigid and the most frightening form of communism, look what they do now. And it's not the only building. They open their doors to so many Western architects. And I know it's a strategy, and maybe, you know, we can debate a little bit about this, but the fact remains, they build these buildings. And even Alvaro Siza said, you know, the Chinese are very, very, they do quality work, although in terms of gadgets, what is made in China perhaps doesn't have the highest reputation. But maybe in the art of building, they are more maybe concerned with detail and a certain quality of construction than in some other countries. Maybe in Alvaro Siza's case, Portugal, I don't know. But how many museums in the world would allow some peasants to enter with an animal? You know, I don't think too many. Look at the top. Look at the buildings seen from the top. You know, it's, again, you don't have the technology to draw this. You cannot do it. You can make a sketch, of course, freehand, but you cannot do rigorous drawings to be able to build it. On the other hand, I like very much the traditional costumes of these people. You know, so there isn't really a contradiction between, you know, the most traditional tradition and the most avant-garde. In a way, they meet halfway, in a way, sometimes. I mean, even the building seen here on the right seems to be interesting. Truly, China is still, I mean, I don't know about after the pandemic, but before the pandemic, it was a big lab, experimental lab in the field of architecture. Well, an animal, and the building somehow is not far away from what we see here. I mean, even the structure, you know, you need generous engineers to work with. And if you exalt in the engineers the same desire you have for enhanced creativity, then a beautiful collaboration could happen. But if the engineer is as timid as you are, and you are both full of fear instead of full of love, and love of life and love of creativity, then the result can only be, you know, banal. Now, the cultural center, this is in a way the masterpiece until now, although they are creating others at this very moment, or at least this is, I think, one of their most accomplished buildings, and you probably know it, it was extensively published, is this one. You know, kind of an opera, big opera at the edge, the outskirts of the city. And I think it's brilliant. Maybe, you know, some say it's not as complex as it might appear. Well, you know, I understand in a way why one would say something like this, but we cannot acknowledge the obvious qualities and the perfection of the execution, and even in a way the perfection of the conception. In a way, it's very simple, yes, but on the other hand, you know, if I am to build this, I couldn't. I confess to my shame, I couldn't, because I don't have the tools to make drawings that can be transformed into a building. I can make a sketch on a napkin, I can, but it's not enough. I mean, look at this interior, you know. You have to know how to externalize through drawings these visions. At this moment, China is more adventurous in the field of architecture than the United States, and probably the most adventurous in the world. In fact, I read in a newspaper that a British architect said, we cannot do in England what the Chinese do in China. Because in England, any client would have objections, while in China, they would accept anything. They would say yes to anything. They don't comment, they don't oppose, they don't arrest your exuberance, which is magnificent. And soon they might not need any longer Western architects, because they have already excellent schools of architecture in China, and they have obviously plenty of people to choose from. So they already have their own architects. But for a while, yes, they invited architects from other countries, you know, more or less famous, but most of them famous. I mean, it is amazing what they built in a very short time, literally, you know, 20, 30 years at the most. I mean, what is this, you know? Look at it, you know, it's again, some kind of magic, architecturally speaking. So there is Ai Weiwei, there are many other firms, and I see almost daily on Arch Daily new creations coming from China, and I'm particularly interested to see how they develop the rural culture of their country, because there are incredible riches, and they have so many thousands and thousands of abandoned old villages. And those are beautiful. I know, because I have books on them, and they are very, very beautiful. Now the China Wood Sculpture Museum, which is also an interesting building, quite big and quite different from the buildings behind it. This is also twisted because to twist a building today is almost a commandment. It's part of the day. We twist things. I have a PowerPoint presentation called Twisted Architectures. And in essence, they found a piece of wood and you'll see it. And they created this building that is not very dissimilar from that piece of wood. And it's the Wood Museum. Even the function of the building is nice. No, the Wood Museum, although it is quite metallic, but it's okay. And you see these people who not too long ago, they were dressed in uniforms and they were reading the little red books and they were extremely poor. They accommodate themselves to very, in a way, forward-looking architectural statements. And, to an extent, we could call them, at least to an extent, avant-garde buildings. It's fine. Just as in Russia, at the beginning of the 20th century, you had the most outrageous forward-looking architects and artists. And, there were many problems then in Russia at the beginning of the 20th century, poverty and lack of education, of culture. So you can create the new even in adverse conditions, maybe even better in adverse conditions. Sorry for these are very nice cross sections, but the image is maybe not very, at least not for my eyes and my eyeglasses. Maybe you see, I hope you see better. Here you see them better, a little better. You see, it's an organic building. It's this twist brings in life, brings in that accident that makes things, exuberant and unexpected, unpredictable, meaning alive. They must have been very, very, pleased to see the fruit of their labor, become reality. That's the piece of wood right here. And this was an initial sketch, so the building approximates somehow this piece of wood and it became the museum. Here it is. In a way, it's a defaced building inside because you see the structure and from at least in some parts of the building, and it's okay, it's fine. Now, this is a village that is was constructed, is a little bit, for my taste, a little bit less unpredictable and a little bit, just a little bit somehow for me, but I could be wrong. This is my perception. A little bit commercial, but it's fine. And it also has something Chinese, because like you see here, there are also almost approximations of being pagoda-like a little bit. And, quite ample works. I mean, these young people are amazing. They build a lot in a country that is open to their ideas and capable of building what they dream. I have some problems, it's true, with this glass, kind of predictable and excessive and not very concerned with loss of energy. But this is also done by big. It's, this is in a way some kind of a mainstream architecture. But in their best works, I think they go a little bit beyond being just mainstream. I mean, for most architects, first of all, in the United States, a young architect will never be able to build just one building like this. Forget about building a whole complex of them or a village. No. You know, I know young architects, very talented, they studied at great schools, and they just move some rock walls from one side of the building to another. So they do some interior alterations, but not to arrive at this kind of mega constructions when they are very young. No way, even older. So China was, and I believe it will continue to be a playground for adventurous architecture and architects. Despite the fact that the government says enough with the extravagant buildings, we have to, because I've heard, I read there are such statements coming from the government, but the country is so huge and is so rich now that anything can still happen. They cannot control everything there. Now, of course, the divine nature is the divine nature. You know, if you ask me if I prefer this to the buildings, I would say I prefer this in terms of beauty. But you know, we need buildings, I guess, in the world. Again, I have some problems with this continuous glass here on the walls, but otherwise it's not a bad work. And you'll see soon a very interesting picture where an old man has in the background this village by mad architects, and this one. He's from a different world. He's from the old China, and behind is the new China. And you have this juxtaposition between the old and the new. And they can coexist, actually. Just as those peasants with the animal coexisted with the museum they entered, this man is, although he has his back towards this, I wonder what he thinks, what he thought. This would have been unimaginable in Mao's time. And you see, life is full of surprises. I'm sure he would not have expected it. Now, this is an interesting work, and it's interesting because here you have two kind of, you know, smaller skyscrapers or towers that in a way connect to those traditional old Chinese paintings that I showed at the beginning. They are so very different from, I mean, look at them, you know, from other towers. And they do resemble those, you remember those granite mountains, you know, those, you know, symbols of stability, of nature in the proximity of water, sea, rivers, whatever. They build these towers, you know, they have something, you know, I mean, the one on the right almost seems like a silhouette, a human silhouette, you know, with the head a little bit lowered. They are not banal, and they are black, and they are so very different from, you know, look at the building on the right and look at what they did. So truly, I think Ma Yansong was correct. He might be seen as, or you know, his work might be seen as being futuristic, but it's also anchored, at least anchored, rooted in the old culture of his own country. And this building on the right is neither futuristic nor connected with the past. It's actually dead, it's banal. It doesn't matter how correctly it was built. But this one, you see, what we see here is the difference between culture and civilization. Alvar Aalto said, and I keep saying this to myself and to others, architecture belongs to culture, not to civilization. This one belongs to civilization. These two belong to culture, because they connect to the spirit of the place, they connect to the culture of the place, while this one doesn't. This one is imported from, this tower could be or could have been anywhere in the world. These two, less so. These belong to China. And in this sense, it's remarkable what Med architects were able to do, because it's very difficult, particularly for this kind of project. And remember the towers they built in Canada, the Marilyn Monroe Towers, very different from these two. These two are imbued with a different spirit, and that's because they built in China. And it's a different kind of architectonic mentality, if I can call it so. They are different from any other building that I see here in this picture. And they are different because they do not neglect, despite or in spite of appearances, their own past, the cultural past of the very old and rich cultural past of China. Bravo to them. And look, I mean, how many skyscrapers or towers seen from the top look like this? I don't know of any other, really. Sorry. Now, the urban forest, this is a project it was not built, but one day they will build it, maybe tomorrow, because they are very fast. And again, you know, you might not agree, and I might not agree myself with everything I see here, but you cannot do something like this unless you know the language of today, and that is, you know, the digital language. Now, they began the construction on the mountainous, this sports campus in China, which is huge, is this one. Look at this. They are building it. Maybe it's already built, because I had this PowerPoint presentation prepared a little more than 1 year ago. Just this, it's a stadium. Just this, like the bird's nest in China is about that size. But look what else they have here. So here we have Olmsted plus Herzog and de Meuron and Ai Weiwei. They are together in this work by Med architects, those three beautiful young architects who make us tremble with desire to do something similar, not ad literam, but in terms of creativity and exuberance and you know, courage. It's big, as you can tell, and they are doing it. Maybe it's already done. I have to develop to bring this presentation up to date. It stops. And I ask for forgiveness, because I do not show his very, very latest works. And in a way, it's good that I don't show them, because I have seen a few works, and my feeling is the intensity and the authenticity of their creativity seems to be a little bit, it seems to me to be a little bit less convincing lately. Maybe because there is such a risk, you know, when you are very successful, to get carried away by success and you know, and also by the multitude of projects you are doing, so the quality of the work might suffer. I hope this is not the case, but what I saw very recently didn't convince me so much. I didn't see yet pictures of this as being built. I imagine they are progressing on it. And, you know, China builds amazingly quickly, you know, maybe not in 10 days, like that hospital in Wuhan, but maybe 12 days. I'm joking. They build fast. So here architecture became landscape, and landscape became architecture. And I think Olmsted would have loved it. Look at the plan. So again, just this is Ai Weiwei and Herzog and de Meuron. All the others are Olmsted plus Med architects. The Living Garden. This project disappointed me and disappoints me. I saw it was published these days, maybe yesterday even, in the Zine and maybe in an Arch Daily. No, sorry, it's not this one. This is a pavilion, but will arrive at their work in the States, in California. This one is actually very close to the Bird's Nest, that stadium that Diana showed us. You see it above, and it's very, very well executed. The pavilion as well. It's a small construction, but it's very convincing and very, very well built. This one has something of Eduardo Torroja to an extent. And it's interesting, this, you know, meeting between the bird's nest and their pavilion in this picture. These Chinese, they can build anything. Look at the solar panels, you know, they're all different. You know, I mean, they are not standardized solar panels because the surface requires, you know, so again, without digitalization, this would be impossible to do. Now, this is a work in Japan. They build now in other parts of the world, including in Japan, and the relationship between China and Japan was not very friendly, as you know. They created here something very interesting. It's a sum of kind of a collage of different interiors, but one in particular is very, very moving because it's very surreal. So they are good at the relationship between theater and architecture. Of course, the mountains are as beautiful in China. Nature never lets us down. It is beautiful everywhere in the world, in fact. We can learn a lot from nature. And Doshi said, you know, that Le Corbusier told him to always try to make a pact with nature. And unfortunately, often we do not do this. But in Asia, I think people understand better the relationship between the work of man and the work of God or nature. I wonder, this is Ma Yansong. Might be. Anyway, cutting the red ribbon. This I like, and there are some pictures, I think the next ones with some people inside. This one and the next one, and I think it's magical. Because here you have the so-called real and the so-called fantastic almost perfectly intertwined and together. So it's real, but in the same time it's dreamy, you know. It's architecture and surrealism united with the simplest means in a way. But so you can create architecture that is very, very appealing and stimulating without actually doing too much. If you have the inspired or the appropriate idea. So they transformed this trail into what you saw. Now we see this was not built, as far as I know until now, a conference center, you know, is in the spirit of some other works that you already saw. I don't even know if it looks so convincing, this rendering, that I'm beginning to believe that it was actually built. Ma Yansong, and he stated, and he's invited to lecture at AA and at Bartlett and important schools, and he says the same thing. Architects must take risks and must push forward the frontiers of architecture. And I think he's right. Although, of course, on the other hand, the climate change and the pandemic and all kinds of issues confront us with limits. But I think the human being, in all our fragility, I think our imagination can envision ways of of still being very creative, even in difficult or adverse conditions. Imagination is very important, and I think Einstein was right when he said imagination is more important than knowledge. If by knowledge you mean, you know, just an accumulation of information or data. Yes, imagination is more important. Sorry for this, a little bit low resolution. Anyway, this one was finalized, and I saw it published a day or two in the zine, I think, and it disappoints me. It's a little bit too mundane and looks artificial. It looks actually better here during the construction when it's not finalized. Then, but this is also kind of mainstream. Su Fujimoto also proposed, at least for Paris, a village on top of a monolithical larger building like here, you know, an office building. So it's some kind of a revenge of the village and the revenge of greenery. You know, you put the trees on top of the building, and you could also place the little village or a cluster of buildings, just like Med Architects did. This was finalized and it was published, as I said, very recently, yesterday or the day before yesterday. But I like it more during the construction because it's still open-ended, and I like open-ended things. Like this looks okay from the top, but otherwise what I saw as being done, I have some questions about it. Anyway, it's their first work in California. They're also building a huge museum for the creator of Star Wars, big museum, very, very big building and big investment. They won that competition as well for George Lucas. Now the fake hills in, this was also built, and here you see only a fragment from what they proposed, but the others might have been built by now. Here again, I see a certain humor that is very close to a certain kind of mundanity that leaves me a little bit cold. But again, I admire the fact that, you know, the Chinese are very open to all kinds of experiments, and these young architects go for it. It was built. This is not a, you know, it was built, just what you see. They build anything, really. They have no problem building anything. You see, his statement, Ma Yansong, some people may say my work is futuristic, but I see it as traditional. Great. He's both, actually. And he even envisioned furniture for Mars. He's both. And he's very lucky to be rooted in the old traditions of his culture. But he doesn't remain trapped there. That's what this man does. He's rooted there, but his head is in the clouds, close to the stars. This is the Lucas Museum. They released the construction, broke ground already in Los Angeles. Look at this, you know. Funnily, he considered himself, you know, a traditionalist. Well, traditionalist is this building, which is dead. But not this one. This one is a spaceship. This one is a spaceship ready to take off. All the other buildings here are, you know, kind of amorphous and, you know, rigid and morose and dead. Particularly this very, you know, banal, I would say, stadium, you know, uncreative stadium. But their building is very different. And it's being built. Bravo to them. It pays to take risks. And now you see some furniture, and I think we are approaching the end of this presentation. You see some furniture actually for Mars, done by, and it's called this series Mad Martian by Ma Yansong. And it was exhibited in a gallery. Of course, they didn't yet bring these pieces to Mars, Um, when you have so much success and you build so much, then you have the money and the resources to experiment, to do all kinds of things. They even offer a fellowship in architecture. So this young man understands that other young people in architecture need encouragement, and he's helping some of them to travel with a fellowship that his firm, his company offers. So, Mad Martian, Ma Yansong. I think we need more of this so-called madness. Plato, the great Greek philosopher, said there are four kinds of madness. One, of course, is to be in love. Second is to be a poet. Third is to be a prophet. And the fourth one is to be clinically mad. And I think without some form of madness, well, hopefully without that, the fourth one, the clinical madness, but they are related in a way. To be a prophet, to be a poet, to be in love, and to be a little bit clinically mad, they are related. But if you are in love, if you have prophet-like tendencies, if you are a poet, you can allow yourself even a touch of so-called clinical madness, because all of them are ingredients in high creativity. And just as children are offsprings of love, great artworks and great architecture are offsprings of a great love for architecture and for culture. Bravo to them. I really think these people, and people like them, because they are not the only ones, of course, but people like them push forward the hope in life and open new horizons of hope. We need that hope, maybe particularly these days when we are confronted with problems, as we know. And you see here the yin and yang of reality and reflection. And about this, Jean-Luc Godard, the great Swiss film director, talked very, very subtly and correctly, I would say, that the imaginary or the reflection, sometimes is more real than the real. So maybe not accidentally, this picture shows both. I call the reflection, in my own way and maybe imperfectly, the metaphysics of architecture. What is the shadow? Is the shadow is not considered as being real, but it depends how we look at it. We need both. We need the physical and we need the metaphysical. That's it. Thank you very much. There are still 5 people here. I thank you. And I have to do something to increase a little bit the number of people who can bear with me longer, but what can I do? Maybe I'm not convincing enough. Let me see who is still here. Echo is here, Daliana is here. There is only one Romanian, of course. The others deserted. The others don't have the, I don't know what is missing, the patience or the nerve or the madness to be here until the end. I should take a picture of this because it's very telling. Of 6 people, 4 people are not from the country I'm talking from, and well, maybe some of, but no, maybe 1 or 2 participated in a presentation that I already made about med architects, but the others didn't.